Hey guys! I'm actually going to pour myself a glass of kombucha while we just wait for everybody to join. So I'm going to have one of my home brews, which I'll show you right now. This is one of my quite accidental surprises, but I'm going to be drinking while we brew because you got to have a kombucha while you brew, right? So I'm going to be drinking a white tea Earl Grey, which I second fermented with some honey and cardamom. So I really like drinking it in the evening because it's kind of a good replacement for beer or wine. You can see it's nice and fizzy, if you can see that. So it kind of gives that nice complexity. A couple of raisins popped out. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be drinking. Maybe you can see a floaty raisin. I don't just put raisins in it for fun. It's meant to be creating a bit more fizz for the second ferment because I like my kombucha really fizzy. So it's just quite fun, I think, to make it. So yeah. Thanks everyone for joining. We're going to get started in about a minute or so. Just want to give people a chance to join. If anyone does have any questions throughout, please feel free just to write a little message down there and I'll do a nice Q&A at the end so we can get everybody's questions answered. And also, if at any point the kind of angle goes funny, then this is literally live from my kitchen, so just let me know. I've also, just while we wait, got a few different kombucha brews on the go I thought I'd show you. This is one, we have a starter kit on our website and my housemate wanted to buy it. So this is actually his experiment coming along. So you've got a nice Scoby on there with some growth underneath. And this is one I did the other week for the Booze Brain, which is a kind of new alcohol platform set up for bartenders to keep them inspired during these times. So this has been fermenting from the 7th of April, and you can see the Scoby in there. Kind of looks like some kind of Casper thing, which is always quite fun. You never know how they're going to turn out. And then this is just a Scoby Hotel, so that's just pure pellicle Scoby. I like to keep loads spare because you never know how your kombucha brew is going to turn out. So it's really important that you do keep spare Scobies so that if you make any mistakes or anything like that, you've got backup. Okay, I think we're going to get started. What I'll kind of do throughout the session is give a little brief intro into myself and how I kind of created Fixate. And then I'm going to talk you through the fundamentals of kombucha. So we'll quickly go through the ingredients, what you need to make it. And then I'm going to do a brew so you can see how we make it. And then we'll do just a little Q&A at the end. So if you've got any questions, then please just let me know. And I'm going to be working with liquid Scoby. So this is what we kind of sell in our starter kit. We also do have this free on the website. So you can just have that with any kind of purchase. And don't forget also, you guys as code members get 15% off. I think the code is Fixate for code, but I know Helen is watching and she's gonna be typing all sorts of things. So, hi Mum. So just to get started then, my name's Freya and I'm the founder of Fixate. So we have 3 kombucha drinks. We've got our triple ginger flavour, strawberry tulsi, and then citra saffron. And my kind of journey to kombucha started about 6 years ago. I was living in Shanghai as part of my Edinburgh University degree and started studying Chinese medicine over there. And whilst I was studying Chinese medicine, one week the doctor brought in some kombucha. And, you know, if you've seen it being brewed, you're a bit like, what is that? I was just really instantly drawn to it and started drinking hers over there. Became completely obsessed with it. I just loved that weird kind of sweet sour taste. it was really refreshing. And when she taught me all about it for Chinese medicine, so it's really good for your liver, your stomach, your gut, I just felt the kind of, I don't know, that connection between drinking something that's good for you and feeling quite good when you drink it. It's a different experience drinking kombucha than it is sort of a fizzy drink, so to speak. So when I got back from university, I very quickly turned my parents' flat into a kombucha microbrewery, which was quite unusual to the kind of town of Farringdon in London, not really where you want to be having a kombucha brewery. And I just started brewing for a cafe, and it kind of led me on all sorts of adventures all over the world to meet lots of different brewers. And I worked in a pickle shop in Berkeley, California for a stint, and that was amazing. Met some really inspiring people and just toured lots of kombucha breweries around America, meeting people, discussing kombucha and kind of honing my craft and learning all there was to know about this funny fermented tea, which really is so incredible, and you can take it in so many different directions that I see it as a platform for kind of creativity. And I think now that we've got so much time at home, you know, we can start all those hobbies, and we can start making sourdough, we can start creating kombucha, and just understanding the process behind the drinks that we might commonly buy when we're out. And I know for a lot of us who work in hospitality, you know, kombucha is not only a great replacement for alcohol, but it's kind of used in a cocktail as well. And we've got some amazing bartenders working with Fixate in the trade. So big shout out to them. So yeah, we have a brewery in South London. We make everything by hand. Chris, our head brewer, is an absolute legend of fermentation, and he used to be head of beer at Partisan. So we feel like we're quite the ferment obsessed crew, and we make everything by hand. We ferment for 14 days, so our product is completely raw. We just rough filter to take out some of the yeast, but everything is in there, the bacteria, the kind of live stuff, which gives it that kind of fizz and that aliveness, which makes you feel so fantastic. And that's the B vitamins, amino acids, probiotic bacteria. But as much as we love kombucha for the kind of health, we love it for the taste, we love it for the flavour. We didn't really just want to be a health drink, we wanted to be so much more than that, just a kind of fun craft beverage that you can have if you're drinking, if you're not drinking, in a cocktail, in a non-alcoholic cocktail. So it's really versatile, and again, like I said, I kind of love drinking it instead of booze in the evening, or with booze, it's also great, so whatever works for you. But I think there's so much beauty in making kombucha, because you start with, you know, essentially a jar of sweet tea, and over the process of about 14 days, you see this culture grow and it changes. It's just amazing, and you get to kind of grow with it and learn about it, make mistakes, make some really delicious things, make some not so delicious things. If you ferment it too far, you can turn it into vinegar. So there's so many different uses for it, and you can put it in salad dressings, you can use it instead of white wine vinegar in your cooking. So you can just get really versatile with it. And yes, so much to say on the actual drink. So I hope, first of all, we all know what kombucha is. For those that don't, the fundamentals are it's fermented tea. So today I'm going to be brewing with our friends Good and Proper. They have some amazing tea. It's essentially like loose leaf. We brew with loose leaf at the brewery, and we are now selling our tea on the website, so you can get our bespoke kombucha blend for your brew. Tea is the kind of first component of kombucha as a fermented tea. It is just such an amazing drink in and of itself, and then when we ferment it, we get all the benefits of tea, like antioxidants, polyphenols, and we make them all bioavailable for the body to absorb. So, you know, fermenting anything makes it more readily accessible for the body. So tea is the first thing we're going to use today. I'm going to use a 50% green and a 50% black tea. I find that's the perfect kind of balance, but feel free to experiment. The kombucha I'm drinking is white tea, so you can use any tea from the Camellia sinensis plant. You want to kind of stay away from herbal teas as much as you can if you're just, you know, brewing kombucha regularly, but you can just keep spare cultures, so, you know, little backup cultures in case you do want to experiment, because it is quite fun to do some. And I actually have a This is my other evening kombucha. So it's actually caffeine free. So I'm using herbal teas here. And this has got cinnamon, chamomile, rooibos, lemon balm, and valerian root. So this is probably something that I'll drink in the evening. But when you're kind of starting out brewing kombucha, you really want to make sure you're using a real tea, because over time the culture will sort of wane if you're not using that, because it wants it for the nutrients, it wants all the kind of properties from the tea plant. So whilst you can ferment other sorts of herbals and things with the kombucha culture, really what it wants is tea all the time. So that's tea. And then the next ingredient we're going to use is sugar. So you can see here, I'm just going to use a raw cane sugar. Any white sugar will really do. It's got to be white sugar. Weirdly, the worse the sugar, the better the kombucha. I think my theory is that basically the yeast don't like to try and break things down. So if you're feeding it, coconut sugar or brown sugar, then it's got a lot of molasses in there. And whilst there are a lot of nutrients in that, it's very hard for the yeast to work with and break down. So really just white sugar is what you want to be brewing kombucha with. Again, feel free to experiment with different Scobys you've got on the side, but for a start out brew, white sugar all the way. You definitely don't want to use honey because it's got its own yeast colonies and microbes and things like that, which will interfere with the kombucha culture. So white sugar, I've already measured out 70 grams here. So we've got 7 grams of tea, 70 grams of sugar, and this is for a 1 litre brew. And then water, I'm going to use my trusty Brita. So always use filtered water if you can. It's not always possible. When it's not possible, I would boil the water, then let it cool. Water is so important for kombucha, and if you're just a casual home brewer, then absolutely fine to use kind of tap water. But if you really want to get geeky about it, definitely filtered water is the way to go. There's just a lot of chemicals and chlorine in the tap water for London especially, or British water, so you just want to take out as much as you can from that. We actually use reverse osmosis at the brewery. We experimented with so many different filtration systems, and I always find it funny with the water, because when I met lots of brewers, they always told us not to use reverse osmosis. But it just goes to show that for our culture, reverse osmosis was actually the best water to use. Whereas in America, where they've got different, quality of water, municipal waters, they said that reverse osmosis is just void water. But for us, that's actually great, because it allows a stable platform for the yeast and bacteria to interact with and not have to deal with any kind of chlorine and fluoride and things like that in the tap water. So going to be using filtered water. And then last but not least, the most important part is the Scoby. So you've got kind of two types of Scoby. You've got the physical Scoby, the kind of jelly pancake, and then you've got the liquid Scoby. Now, such common confusion between the two. They're essentially the same thing, but this liquid Scoby, which is kombucha from a previous batch, is the original Scoby. And scientifically, this is called a cellulose pellicle. So really, this liquid is housed within this jelly pancake thing. And I'm actually going to just get one out so you can see. This is my kombucha Scoby. So this is basically cellulose. It's a byproduct of the fermentation and it's not necessary to brew with. So, you can brew with it and you will get lots of these after a few brews, but it's not 100% essential. What's most important is that you've got kombucha from a previous batch, because herein lies your symbiotic yeast and bacteria, and that's going to inoculate the brew, bring down the pH and kickstart fermentation. So you can use both, but what's most important is the liquid Scoby. And then from your first brew, you're going to grow your own physical pellicle, which you don't need. So you can keep it in, the Scoby hotel, or you can throw it away. You can use it in, there are some people that use it as vegan leather. You can fry it almost like sashimi. Some people eat it. Some people blend it and turn it into like dog treats and dehydrate it. You can get really creative, and I've got tons of kombucha books with kombucha Scoby recipes, but that's for you to decide. We have occasionally been asked for some spare Scoby for some salad bars that wanted to put it in a salad. So, you know, get creative and no doubt you'll find something to do with it. Okay, so I'm going to be following our Fixate recipe. So just for those that have rejoined, we're going to do a 1 litre brew today. I've got 7 grams of tea, 70 grams of sugar. I've got 200 millilitres of starter Scoby liquid, and I'm going to fill it to 1 litre of water. So I've already boiled the kettle because I like to brew with about 80 to 90 degree temperature water. Again, not specific about it, so don't feel like you need to brew at the perfect temperature. Really what we're doing is extracting the tea for nutrients, not just for flavour. So I'm going to steep my tea. Also, because I probably wouldn't advise pouring water straight into the jar, so I like 80 degrees because then I can just do it on the jar. And also, one of the most important things to note is that this is a sterile jar. So I've cleaned it beforehand, very easy to do. Wash it with soapy water, pop it in the oven on 150 degrees for about 10 minutes. It will be hot after, so make sure you're wearing oven gloves. So I've got 7 grams of tea, and then I'm just gonna start my steep. So that's about 100 millilitres of water. I'm not being precise here because all I want to do is make a tea concentrate, because that's going to allow me to add the Scoby straight away, because right now I've got boiling water in here. I'm going to top it up with filtered water and then pour in the Scoby, and it will be room temperature. What you want to avoid is pouring your Scoby into a hot solution, because it's going to kill the yeast and bacteria and stunt your brew. So, whilst we're steeping, I'm just going to set the timer to 5 minutes. Okay, cool. So, whilst we're steeping, I'll talk just a little bit more about where kombucha comes from. If you've got any questions, and I might have missed some because I haven't really been watching the screen so much, so just let me know if you've got any questions and we'll get to them at the end. But if you've brewed kombucha before, then would love to know sort of any experiences as well, if you've had any problems. Quite often we get emails and WhatsApps and Instagram messages with just people's Scobies. We've become sort of like the Scoby doctors through this period, which is great because it shows that so many people are actually home brewing. And yeah, I think, you know, we've got this time now. We might as well pick up a new hobby, learn something useful, and, you know, start messing around. I think especially if a lot of us are in hospitality, then kombucha is such a versatile drink, and whether it's just a soft drink or you turn it into a concentrate or you make a glaze for a dish in the restaurant, there are so many uses for kombucha. So just had a question from my brother which says, does it have to be in a glass jar? Yes, ideally. If you're home brewing, you want to avoid plastic or sort of metals, because after a while the acids can kind of leach. You know, it's not the end of the world, and if you were to brew in plastic, you could probably change the container every 6 months just to avoid that, because kombucha's got a really low pH and it's very acidic, so it will wear away the material it's in. So I like brewing in glass. You know, traditional crocks are kind of porcelain material, and clay is also good, but glass, I like to see the culture change. I like to know that it's fermenting, and seeing that the Scoby is forming on top is just always a really healthy sign. So glass is best, yes. So just gonna keep swirling this because we really want to extract as much of the tea as possible. How about a clay plant vase? Wouldn't probably brew in a vase. I think one of the most important, I don't know if that's a joke, but one of the most important things about brewing kombucha is surface area. So really, the wider the vessel, the better. And you kind of want, you know, the quickest way to brew kombucha is being done in America, because people are now harvesting the Scoby to dehydrate it into leather in the fashion industry over there. Someone's actually brewing it in a bath, And the reason for that is because a bath has a huge surface area, so it's going to ferment very quickly because of the kind of openness to the oxygen, because it's an aerobic ferment, it requires oxygen. So surface area is quite a big part, and probably would not brew in a clay plant vase. Naomi has asked, would a traditional Kilner jar be best? Naomi, you are wise, and yes, a traditional Kilner jar would be best. Kind of reason for this is that they're good quality, the glass is nice and thick. Again, you wouldn't want to really pour boiling water straight in, so 80 degrees is fine. But yeah, Kilner are kind of great for any preserves, and I've got a lot of pickles and things on the go, and I like to use Kilner jars if I can. So yeah, and you don't need the lid because again, it's an aerobic ferment, meaning that there's airflow and oxygen. Everything kind of beneath the pellicle here, this is all fermentation, and everything above it is actually respiration. So when I talk about it being an aerobic ferment, we are using oxygen here, and there are, a lot of ferments which are anaerobic, meaning that they don't require oxygen. The oxygen isn't actually, we don't really, we kind of want to take off the Scoby at the top to let the oxygen get into the brew. But the Scoby on the top acts as a sort of protection. It's kind of like a coat almost to protect anything coming into the brew. So, whilst it's a byproduct, it's also there as sort of a protective mechanism. Okay, so 4 minutes, 29 seconds. We're going to take the tea out soon. Oh, that's good. And then I'm going to add my sugar. So again, just using 70 grams of cane sugar here for a 1 litre brew. That is kind of proportional. So if you were going to do 2 litres, you could do 140 grams. But again, there are no kind of hard and fast rules in kombucha. So experiment. Maybe you want to try less sugar, maybe you want to try more. If it's really hot in summer, then it will ferment quite quickly and you'll, get rid of the sugar quite quickly. You might want to use more. If it's quite cold and it's taking a really long time to ferment, try using less sugar. See if that kind of balance out your brew. But again, get creative. You don't need to use, the perfect guidelines here. Use more tea, use less tea, try green tea, try white tea. Again, if you're going to use herbals, keep a Scoby aside so you can experiment with that. But yeah, just it's kind of good to get creative. So I'm going to just take out my tea, giving it a nice old squeeze. Quite often we get asked as well if you can use metal crockery with kombucha, and yes you can when you're making it. You're not going to leave the spoon in while it's fermenting, so it's only when it starts to ferment that you just want to make sure that there's no kind of touching the metal and stuff like that. But again, I used to be a real purist when brewing kombucha, and now I'm just a bit more relaxed, so as long as it's not fermenting with a spoon in, then we're all good. Okay, so my sugar is going in, and I'm going to stir it. So because this water is still hot, it's great for me to add the sugar now so it can dissolve. So you want to make sure that there's no sugar left undissolved, because it's just going to lay dormant in the brew and not really be used as a mineral. Okay, so I've got my sweet tea. I'm now going to top it up with about 800 millilitres of filtered water, because I used about 200 millilitres here. So using my filtered water, got 200 millilitres. Just realised I'm doing 800 millilitres. It's been a long day in social isolation. So that's 600 millilitres more. So together we've got 800 millilitres, just to make it easy for everybody. Okay, so 1 litre of sweet tea, 70 grams of sugar, 7 grams of tea, a tea concentrate, dilute it with filtered cold water, Now it's the perfect temperature to add the Scoby to. If I was to add it to the sweet tea concentrate, it would just be far too hot and it would kill any of the kind of yeast and bacteria. So the final step, the most important, is adding of the Scoby. Very simply, we're just going to pour it in. And what this has done is inoculated the sweet tea solution with a host of yeast and bacteria from a previous batch, which is the particular kombucha culture. And what it's going to start doing now is kickstarting the fermentation. The sugar's going to be consumed. The process is then going to turn the sugar into acids and enzymes. And we know that fermentation is the chemical conversion of sugar into carbon dioxide. So, it's our sweet tea. Carbon dioxide and alcohol, because alcohol is a byproduct of fermentation, but because this is aerobic, the alcohol is metabolized and it does not build up in the brew. So, there we have it, our kombucha ready-made. I actually have a temperature strip on here. This is an old jar, but I'm quite anal in terms of keeping all the variables consistent. So I like to check that the temperature is consistent, because temperature plays a huge part when you're brewing kombucha. For Alex that just asked, this is about 200 milliliters of starter liquid. From the previous batch, yes, this is straight from our starter tank in the Freyas Brewery. But a kind of rule of thumb is 10% starter. The more the merrier, because the more yeast and bacteria you're adding in, so it kind of gives it a boost almost. So there's no kind of hard and fast rules. It might ferment a bit quicker with more yeast and bacteria because you're giving it a head start. But yeah, minimum 10% starter. Any more is just a blessing really for the booch. Okay, so I'm going to label this. I'm going to keep it somewhere warm. It will be ready in around 10 to 14 days. After which we're going to see the culture grow on top. And then you've grown your own pellicle Scoby. You can keep it, you can reuse it, you can make another batch, you can do a continuous brew, you can second ferment it into a flavour like this white tea, Earl Grey, cardamom and honey, which is, yeah, a kind of great drink to have in the evening instead of booze, or as a cocktail mixer, as you wish really. So I don't know if anyone's got any questions, or if anyone's just joined and needs a recap of anything, but do let me know. And we're thinking about doing another one where I can demonstrate a second ferment, and that's where you can really get the juicy flavours and yeah, just mix it up and have fun. What I like to do actually is whenever I've got just kind of herbs or spices or something's in season, like got lots of rhubarb at the moment, then I like to put that in a second ferment. It keeps it quite spontaneous and therefore, you know, creative. And I think any ferment or anything that you are making with your hands is a creative experience. And now that we do have a bit more time on our hands, perhaps it's great to explore that creativity and not kind of stay within the lines of our laptops and things like that. So getting in the kitchen, getting creative, having fun, making kombucha, making pickles, making sauerkraut, making bread, whatever works for you. So Naomi would like to see a second ferment. Brilliant. Well, maybe we can do that. And Freya, who's got a great name, has asked, what do I do now? I'm good with taste after 3 weeks. Okay, so just quickly then, say this, what I prepared earlier, is ready. I would decant this into a flip top bottle, leaving about 10% so I can brew again, and that the physical culture is kind of kept in its liquid from that previous batch. With the decanted liquid, I would then put that in the flip top bottle, which is clean, and I would maybe add some flavourings, so ginger, oregano, rhubarb, whatever you fancy. This, again, honey and cardamom, quite simple. And then I would stick the lid on it, make sure that it's airtight. You can second ferment it at room temperature for around 5 to 10 days, or you can put it straight into the fridge and just start drinking it. So again, no rules really, just when it tastes good to you, you want to drink it, you're feeling happy with it, start drinking it. Okay, so Nikki said, is it worth testing acidity? We tend to add sparkling water to ours just in case we're poisoning ourselves. So don't worry about poisoning yourself. Kombucha is a really safe drink, and if it molds, you will know about it. You will see growth on the Scoby. You know, it's not gonna look like a happy kombucha if it's not feeling very happy. So if it molds or if it's poisonous to drink, you'll see signs of it immediately, and in which case you can just discard it, start all over again. You know, if you're adding sparkling water to it, then maybe you've just slightly over fermented it, or you want to create some fizz, which is also great. I've added sparkling water to mine sometimes if it's tasting too vinegary. You don't necessarily have to test the pH, but you are welcome to. The kind of home test strips, they're not always that reliable. We have we do test the pH, and pH is everything for us, so we do know that it's safe, but also that it is a healthy sign of fermentation. So pH in kombucha is super, super important commercially. But if you're just doing it at home in your kitchen, you know, have fun with it. Experiment with the pH if you want to, but, you know, it's not always reliable, the home strips. Trust me, I've tried, and, you know, I've gone down many loopholes of trying to find the different acidity of my kombucha, and really I should just be drinking it. So if you over ferment it, use it as vinegar, use it in a salad dressing, add it to sauces, soups, risottos, but, you know, or just use it as a really great mature starter for your next batch, and just kind of just discard it. But I hope that helps. What signs should I look for so I know the kombucha is culturing properly? Well, really healthy Scoby formation on the top. So this is a bit cloudy because I've, let's see, this is one of the caffeine free one. Okay, so you should see on top, it's going to be really nice and white. You know, you might get a buildup of yeast, that's perfectly normal. You can take that out if you don't want an overly yeasty brew. But just a healthy culture will just look a bit weird. No two cultures look the same, and I try not to get too hung up on your culture looking perfect, because you create something but you've got no control over how it's gonna look. So as long as it's not molding, which again you'd see, then it should be fine. And if your Scoby has changed colour from pale to quite dark, is that normal? It seems to be working okay. 100% normal. It would probably just be from the tannins in the tea. So it would be interesting to know what tea you used for that, Marianne. But yeah, very normal. Your Scoby can turn all sorts of colour, dark, and it's very much just dyed almost, as in the colour. It's been dyed in colour from the tea. So don't worry too much about that at all. Oh, white tea. After this, just send us a photo and we can have a look at your kombucha. But I really wouldn't worry. As long as your Scoby's not black, then they all look so different. So don't worry about it being, you know, as you expect, because it, you know, if you look at all these Scobys, they're kind of all different. But the overarching commonality is that they are all mostly quite white. You know, you'll get some really beautiful ones like in here. These are some stunners, which are just pure cellulose, creamy kind of tanned flavour, colour even. Yeah, but it looks good. Okay, so I think that's all. If you've got any questions, then please do get in touch. We love talking about anything related to do with kombucha. And we've got a special discount, which is 15% off our whole store, specifically for code if you type in fixate for code, number 4. And yeah, I hope you all have a great journey with your kombucha brewing. If you've got any questions, please let us know. And oh, we've had one last one. Can you use a tea with flavours in it like a pre-mixed chai? It would depend what was in your... Helen's going to message you. It would depend what's in your chai. Yes, you can. No hard and fast rules, but keep a spare Scoby, because if it goes wrong and you've got something in there like oils, then it can start just to damage the Scoby, and you want to keep it as healthy as possible. So yeah, so much to say on kombucha, could be here all night, but I'm not going to take up any more of your time. So thank you so much, everybody. Absolute pleasure to be here. Thanks for coming into my kitchen. I think this is the most amount of human contact I've had in about 3 weeks. So please keep in touch. We're Fixate on Instagram. I'm Freya. Thank you so much for Code and everyone for having us. And I hope you have a really lovely evening. Thank you.